Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Facetime Value podcast. The Lonely Margin. How's your day?
No,
No,
stop this. Come on now.
no.
Don't hit me with that. Start that shit over.
All right, bet. So, AI, man, AI is really big thing now, man.
No,
What?
stop this recording. Start all over.
What do you mean? I was gonna use the intro as the intro. Get me like the intro because we fucked up. It's funny.
All right. But damn, softball. You just gonna hop right into it? Start
Yeah,
talking shit.
yeah. So it's gonna be the
Is this a
intro.
family friendly show? Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah, of course. Because I in YouTube, I basically say it's not meant for kids, so that's all I have to
All right,
do.
cool. Perfect.
Just don't say crazy stuff because then there is certain words that can't be said, and
Like, I should probably know what they are now.
um, I don't think it's gonna be part of this conversation. So
You can always text me.
yeah, artificial intelligence, man. So there's several systems in the U.S., man, that are outdated. I think we had a conversation before. We didn't go into deep detail because we wanted our audience to know more about it. And I think it would be, more constructive if we, let the world know our thoughts about this topic. So what are your thoughts about AI replacing current political systems, such as our voting system, our ballot system?
I don't know about replace Joshua, but
Okay.
I think it's a larger conversation.
All right, not replace, but enhance, make it more efficient, more accurate.
Right. I think we're talking about something larger than just election systems. I mean, we could talk about just the elections, but in reality, we're talking about the entire American experiment that was started, 250 odd years ago.
Yeah.
If you look at it from a systems design or, any kind of software design perspective, what we're sitting on is a piece of technology that hasn't been updated in over 50 years.
Yo, I can't stop staring at that stain on your shirt.
Shit, I have to do this.
That's cool. Continue. You're
Now,
saying
let's start that over.
no, it's fine. Dude. That's hilarious. It's good. But you were saying it's bigger. Right? It's bigger than just the thought of replacing.
It's more than just the elections, it's the entire framework behind our government. I mean, we complain about corruption, we complain about things that, truth be told, the idea is that
Okay. So how can AI enhance
it's not
democracy?
about AI. That's what I'm saying. AI is just a tool to be used. The question is,
Okay, keep going. Keep going. Okay. What do you mean by that? I thought this
so
conversation was going to be about AI, but I mean, you have a different insight, different perspective. It seems like you have a bigger viewpoint than I do. Because me, I was more drilled into AI, but I think you're right.
so I would say, what role does technology play in updating a government that wasn't designed to be updated with technology? I mean, one way to look at it would be the system that was designed with some built-in checks and balances, and therefore doesn't need any additional help from AI or any other kind of technology. But the reality is, the living document that was supposed to be the Constitution becomes less and less applicable as time goes on and the more that we develop. I mean, right now, a lot of what we're seeing in the media is just people's different interpretations of what the Constitution meant. And I mean, I think that's a feature, not a bug. It was meant to be kind of ambiguous, so that we could kind of debate the pros and cons of every situation in a more ad hoc fashion, as opposed to a bunch of people just pointing to a document saying, "Hey, it was explicitly written like this." But with that being said, is there a role for current technology in updating a 250-year-old system? What do you think?
Well, now that you mentioned the whole different interpretation of the law, I think that's something that we can get rid of nowadays. Document, right? Now we're able to actually document things, and people could look back at it and say, okay, this is what they meant by this law. Versus, like, I mean, back in the day, it was just some guy writing a piece of paper, right?
I don't think it was that simple. I mean, we've
Yeah,
always had
I know. Of
documentation.
course, they had to like get it approved and get it, passed and stuff like that. But like, I think now technology could help us document, man. Like, keep track of what we meant by a law, like what's the interpretation of the law.
We got to think about the three different functions of our our government. We got the judicial, the legislative, and the executive. It's really the judicials. It's their prerogative to interpret the law. They don't write the law.
So would you say that they can document?
They already do. So that's what we have. That documentation
But
that you're talking about is really just case precedent. A bit of the law is tried in every case, and they use a bit of some obscure code to use that as justification for why the law should be lenient in this direction or the other. That's what we've been relying on up until this point. The question is there any more efficient way of doing it that's more effective or more ethical?
hmm.
I'm curious about your thoughts on content moderation in ChatGPT.
All right, so I know right now it's moderated to like not answer certain questions, right? It's part of its, I guess, whatever code that it has in there. And I think there was a in Telegram there was a channel where they actually hacked ChatGPT-3 and they were able to like get rid of whatever code was stopping it from doing certain functions and stuff. And what they were doing is that they were actually telling it, "Hey, write me some malware," and it was doing that. But I think they shut down that Telegram. But my thoughts on that is that I think that there's going to be a artificial intelligence that's not going to have moderation. The way it is right now, I don't agree in certain things because it's kind of like censorship in a way. It's not free, right? But then again, if you do give it freedom, right, this technology, what can it do? What will it do? So I'm in the middle. I think it should be moderated, but not too much.
Hmm. So for you, is it a question of degree, like how much moderation there should be? For me,
Yeah.
it's more of a question of who should be doing the moderating.
Oh, yeah. And it kind of reminds me of like children provision, like there's applications out there that you basically put settings so that your child is not able to access certain websites and things like that. It's kind of the same thing that's imposed right now in artificial intelligence. But yeah, that's crazy. Who is going to be in charge of controlling that?
I think it depends on. I think it depends on like
Moderator in
the
the meta
deployment
something?
model. If you if you put it in the hands of the corporations, or not the corporations, but if you put it in the hands of
Government?
no of the innovators, of the open AIs of the world, the people that are the next big companies that are going to come out with
Like open
some
source?
GPT variant. If you put it in the hands of them and they get to decide if they content monitor, then I feel like whoever decides to do the least amount of content monitoring is going to have some kind of competitive edge over the other ones.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's a perfect version of a language model that filters just enough content, but I don't know what that would look like. But I think that if you put it in the hands of those companies, it's gonna work out pretty. It's gonna work out like any other technology, where if you let the people just kind of decide for themselves, that's going to be the one with the comparative advantage.
Hmm.
And so I almost think I forgot where I heard this, but I'd be curious to see kind of like an open source model where you get to decide, all right, I want my, GPT to give me these kinds of responses or not include these kinds of sources. Um, or, balls to the wall, give me everything. I don't really care. Let it go to work. I want to see
Yeah,
what that baby could do. Um, I think that model would probably be better.
but there still has to be limitations because if you're able to put certain like settings on your artificial intelligent um software or program, like there has to be certain things that it will not do for like it just won't do
Why?
it. Unethical. Why? Because bro, like imagine if you have like malintention, do something bad to another person, country. You know what I mean? Like the things that will be able to do.
Well, is Chat GPT, or let's give this hypothetical technology company a name. Let's call it Project Blue Star. Let's say Blue Star starts producing a whole bunch of AI generated content. At what point is Blue Star responsible for the actions that people take on the content that it produces?
Maybe there should be some threshold where see this is where it becomes kind of like the privacy aspect of it, right?
Right.
So you're asking it to do certain things. It will do what you're asking it, but should that information be reported back to certain authority figures? Like, let's just say if you're asking it, hey, I want to target this person and do this to this person, Chat GPT or whatever. You said, what did you say, Blue Star? Blue Star, can you help me how to do this? And it's like, all right, cool. I will show you how to do this and that. But just know that I just reported your intention. Do that to someone else. That gets reported to the authorities, and the authorities will be like, okay, cool. This kid is trying to do, God forbid, something to a school. I'm not going to say what it is, but he's trying to do something. He's trying to cause harm to a certain school. That gets reported to the authorities. The authorities hopefully could stop the kid. But the problem with that is that you're enabling the kid to even get that information, right? Versus not even allowing the kid or the person, not even giving a chance, the right to that human, to ask that question and get information, get some feedback.
What if that person's just looking it up for academic purposes?
See, that's another thing. Like, you have to go through a verification procedure if that's the case, right? If you want to be sure, there's like so much that goes behind this, man. Because it's like once you have access to information, and once you have access to something that could process that information and give you a really really fast response and breakdown of something that you might have no idea of how to do, like that opens doors, bro. It opens doors to like good and bad things, right?
Yeah, I mean, you never know when you're going to discover the next neutron.
Yeah, and if we do get to a point where it's like it's able to answer your question and also give you a breakthrough, right? Like something that hasn't been discovered, then that, I mean, at that point, would you even need like humans at that point if it's able to evolve on its own?
I think that's presupposing a whole lot of things um, that aren't necessarily possible with what's available to us. So we're just talking what ifs. But if we were to bring it back to, you know, even what the capabilities that ChatGPT has today, there's a big difference between ChatGPT coming up with something truly original that could be used in some novel way, be it good or bad. In other words, it develops a technology that nobody's conceived of. But it's also a very different thing for ChatGPT to put together a whole bunch of different disparate ideas that nobody really, saw the linkage between, and ChatGPT narrates you a nice story that now spawns thought and makes you come up with the next technology. Maybe it unlocks a couple doors for you. Now, is ChatGPT responsible for coming up with that, new revelation? Did it actually transcend any kind of truth that we weren't particularly, that it wasn't obvious to us? Or
Yeah.
is it still on the responsibility of the individual using ChatGPT? ChatGPT is a tool, but it's not a magic box. You
Yeah,
know,
not
it's
yet.
not a magic wand. It's not just going to make things happen. Um, so I'm not sure what kind of ethical or legal liability the platform has to content monitor its answers. I feel
Yeah.
like almost that should be up to the individual user to decide what kind of things they want to get access to. But I'm also willing to admit, like, there's situations where it's probably not going to be the best idea to allow, ChatGPT to come up with a perfect recipe for a cobalt bomb. Show me how to make the most efficient, pipe bombs without having to actually get, personally involved. I don't know. You can come up with some XYZ situation.
And also, like, who owns that, right? So, like you said, right now we're not at the point where artificial intelligence can produce something new. Ordinary could only like we can only use it as a tool, right, to help us,
Yeah.
to aid us in a way. But if it gets to the point where it's able to do new discoveries and breakthroughs by the information that you inputted in it, or just by asking the question, a question that was never asked before, right? The artificial intelligence created this new breakthrough that solves how to do a certain thing, right? Who owns that? Who gets credit? Is it the owner of that artificial intelligence program, the person who actually asked the question and provided some sort of input to that artificial intelligence to come up with that conclusion and solution? Like at that point, like think about it, like that would be like a whole bunch of like, oh my god. Because I can only imagine. Okay, wow, you have a breakthrough. The person's excited. Oh my gosh. Oh wait, but the artificial intelligence did all the work, but it couldn't do it without.
Right.
Yeah, who gets the credit? Who gets the payout? Right? Like,
Right.
how would that work?
It was a couple weeks ago on the All In podcast. Jason Calcanis, who's one of the hosts, one of the besties, was having that thought. Actually, he's brought it up in a couple episodes, but from his perspective, a lot of that problem that you just talked about could be solved with providing references in your results. So ChatGPT comes up with some, novel appearing answer, but really it's just an amalgamation of a bunch of different inputs. So the question is, uh, could you come up with a realistic and actionable way of providing or giving reference or giving credit to, or I guess you could put it as assigning different weights to particular sources that are feeding the language model, and say, all right, I got 30% of
Oh
my
yeah,
generated response from this source, from this source, from this source. But realistically speaking, how do you do that when you know you're querying a million pages? Does everybody get royalties at that point?
yeah. It's crazy that you bring that up because that's a problem that was happening with the whole AI creating images. Because what it was doing, it was getting art from different creators to create that one artificial intelligence image or whatever. So a lot of artists felt some type of way. They're like, "Hey, it's not fair. I'm giving access to this program to my my art, but it's taking some of my art to create something new, but I'm not getting any royalties. I'm not getting anything out of that." And not only that, there's also like there's a whole bunch of artists. I think it's like a movement now too that they're trying to ban artificial intelligence from actually creating things that are art, like music as well. There's actually an artificial intelligence website. I'll put it in the link below. I forgot the name. I don't have it on the top of my head. But what this does is that you're able to basically ask the AI, "Hey, can you give me a beat of this song of Drake with this song of Jay Z?" And it'll create a brand new beat. And of course, it'll ask you, "Hey, do you want to purchase it?" But just the fact that it's able to now create beats out of the fly, unique, brand new beats, it kind of like belittles the fact of or just like being an artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of
Like
minimizes.
yeah, creativity. Like I'm thinking about like not only an artist, maybe an architect, right? Usually you hire an architect that specializes in this certain like
Style.
So it's like, what if the artificial intelligence is able to create something way better, something that the architect couldn't even think of.
Yeah,
So,
does it make the artist obsolete at that point, or the architect?
hmm
Um, I mean, there's different ways of looking at it. Because one way you could look at it is, all right, artificial intelligence isn't coming up with anything new. It's all just
pre-existing.
right. It's a derivative of its inputs. You could
Yeah,
also make that same argument for artists and architects in general, where everything that they're building is a derivative of all the things that they've seen. So
this
in this situation, either way you slice it, really what you're talking about is making the architect or the artist um, irrelevant to that equation. Um, I don't think there's much moral ground to stand on either way. If you look at it, really, if you look at it critically, I don't see a distinction between the two. With that being said, I could say that artificial intelligence isn't at this current point capable of creating anything that's remarkably new and exciting that would otherwise render the artist obsolete.
yeah. I mean, it makes me wonder. Do you think the government has like its own?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. If the public sector, private and public, yeah, usually, well, depends. Sometimes the private sector is ahead of the public sector. I don't know.
Usually is, but in terms of groundbreaking technology that potentially could have some kind of national security,
Yeah,
um,
like war or intelligence. Yeah.
yeah, intelligence gathering for the most part. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a huge propensity to try to militarize it at some point, or to just weaponize. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Is to really weaponize a piece of technology, just for
Yeah.
the just in case kind of mentality.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that they already have like some sort of AI that gives them like a some sort of like action plan and then a percentage of success versus failure, and
Sure.
they go this way versus that way.
But that also kind of lends to the point of, is ChatGPT going to be a tool that's used primarily by consumers, or is this something that's going to have more relevance in an industrial capacity or a government one? Like, we really don't know. ChatGPT was a really cool idea of a tool, but I have yet to identify a use case that's like, all right, this is exactly what I can see people using this in the future for the next 100 years. Like, I don't see the next big use case for that tool. And so right now it's just kind of like this ambiguous tool that we're using to try to solve a bunch of different problems. But like I'm thinking, what was it? I don't know, 15, 20 years ago when they came up with the idea of like Google goggles, and it was some AR kind of contraption that you put on your head and allows you to ingest a whole bunch more data about your environment. And it was like, oh my god, I can't wait to see the day where everybody's walking around with some Google goggles. And 15 years go by and they realize, this is actually a technology that's better suited for people working in an industrial plant, for supply chain logistics, for that kind of thing, where you need a whole bunch of data displayed in front of you and you can't, it'd probably be better to have it displayed in front of you in real time as opposed to you having to bounce between a desk and a factory line.
I don't know about that. And guys, you heard it here first. Well, not probably not, but I heard it somewhere else. Um, Actually, the Meta, another thing they leaked. Not only did their learning algorithm leak, but they also have prototypes. They're I don't know what they're gonna name it. I think the name's out there. I just don't remember it. But it's basically supposed to be a breakthrough. Actually, it didn't leak. I think Mark actually talked about it. Mark
Oh
Zuckerberg.
yeah, Mark.
Yeah, yeah,
Is
he
Mark to
came.
you?
That Mark. Yeah. So yeah, he actually talked about how I forgot whatever it's glasses that you put on wearables, but it's supposed to replace the smartphone. You're no longer going to use your smartphone. Everything's going to be basically projected. Everything's going to be augmented reality. It's gonna you're no longer going to basically carry around your phone, man. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, right? Because when you're driving or like
Right. The idea being that the technology's been around and the idea of what we could potentially use it for has been around for 15 years. None of this is a new theory of how we could potentially use technology. The issue is there hasn't been a practical use case that's come up where the most obvious and most optimal answer is this particular wearable. So it's like that,
Yeah.
the tech, put it this way, the use case needs to front run the technology. You kind of have to have a need for it. I mean, you can come up with a brand new tool, a brand new type of hammer that hammers some specific type of nail that nobody's seen yet, but that's a useless tool.
Yeah.
Feel me? So I would love to see ChatGPT in the hands of consumers in products that make sense, that are robust. I've just yet to see it. I mean, there's a lot of cool things that it can do for sure. But I've seen more of a business application for artificial intelligence at this point in the technology. At this point, it's in its development. I can see, companies that have proprietary data being a better benefactor of this technology than, let's say, a random, consumer. Not saying that it should be restricted. I'm just saying you're going to get more squeeze out of it if you already have a whole bunch of data to work off of. That way you don't run into those, kind of like, who do we distribute, or how do we attribute credit to a whole bunch of different sources? And what if they don't agree to it? It's just like, well, this is all my data. I'm agreeing to it. Give me the credit. I just want you to remix whatever I'm looking at and give me something kind of new, a new perspective. You know what I mean? And you eliminate a lot of the ethical and moral dilemmas that we were just talking about. Now that could all go away if you develop a very specific use case for, a ChatGPT like product. Um, but the whole Swiss Army knife of technology, I see it causing a lot more problems than it potentially solves in the short run. In the long run, I think it's a fantastic idea. It's a fantastic technology, um, that people could take pretty far. But as of right now, I feel like, gosh, there's so many ways for this idea to die, and not that many for it to flourish.
Wow, really? You see it somehow like not flourish?
I mean, it's useful, but with all the ethical conundrums that this technology faces, all it takes is another Sam Bankman-Fried to take advantage of a Chat GPT to do something that nobody thought you could do that, but there was no
Yeah.
law saying that you couldn't. And, well, what was the government's role in protecting the public's interest? And I can't
Well,
begin
what
to.
happened to that guy that you mentioned? Like, what happened to him? Do you know that states
Who?
haven't been the Sam guy, the
Oh,
FTX guy?
Sam Bankman fraud? Yeah, I don't know.
I haven't. Yeah, haven't kept up with the case. It's kind of got through the rug, kind of like the Epstein thing.
Nah, we know what happened to Epstein.
We did that. Well,
Got
yeah, you're right.
suicided. Sam
Yeah.
Bankman-Fried is just,
Did they ever release
a
that
wrap.
list?
What list?
The list, bro. The Epstein list,
I ain't never heard of no list.
bro. Were you on that list, bro? Let me
Absolutely
find.
not. I'm a good
I
boy.
thought you
I'm a
did.
good Christian man.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that, man? How come you think like there's not enough like news footage on it? It seems like people forgot about it. Like
Too many conflicts of interest.
that, it's insane. So
Otherwise,
that kind of
we would have
that
demanded a solution by now. But the reality is, the people that are investigating and the people that are reporting on it, for some reason, have no vested interest in finding out who that man was working with.
wow, that's
It's the same
insane.
thing with
How
every
about
major controversy. If there's way too many conflicts of interest, too many competing interests, you're going to hit a
but that
stalemate.
involved children? Like you know what I mean? You would think they would do something about them. Instead, they did just overwrites everything. The fact that it's conflict of interest,
We have no idea what strings are being pulled and for what reasons.
that is insane. America.
No, it's just governments in general.
Oh yeah,
Don't
it
call me an
involved a lot.
anarchist, people. I'm not an anarchist. It's just a reality.
Yeah. How about the Twitter trials?
What about it, Papi?
Like I haven't heard anything about that in like actually it's been a while actually, probably like 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
How'd you?
Have you heard?
Were you
No.
one of those people that believed, like, let's say during the pandemic, you believed I don't know, were you a pro-vaxxer? Were you an anti-vaxxer? Were you
Look,
anti-science?
we're not going to talk about this in the podcast, but I will say this: it's crazy how it was proven that it was suppressed. Man, there was a lot
Right.
of doctor professionals that were against the bug, right, and against the shot, and they got away with it. Man, they suppressed their information and they fooled the. Well, damn, that gives away where my stance is.
Well, the point that I'm trying to make is, when there were people going around saying, "Hey, like I'm being suppressed," or "Hey, like I feel like I'm," there was a lot of YouTubers that were saying, "Oh, like my content's being throttled, my content's being suppressed," and everybody said, "Ah, you're full of it," and people got gaslit for a long time about things that you know a good portion of the public kind of wanted to lend credibility to, like, "Hey, I believe it." And then,
They're doing.
fast forward a couple years, Twitter files start coming out, and it's like, oh shit, this entire time you were gaslighting us. We were kind of right. There is some kind of weird conspiracy going on. There is some weird you know, technocracy, I think is how you say the word, but kind of like an oligarchy, but a technocracy.
So what do people like now that this came out? Like it seems like people don't care. It's
People's attention span is they're too short. They're on to the next thing.
but but it makes no sense at the fact that people were so against the other side, but now that it was proven that the other side had a, reliable resource and legit, research that was done, like they're just not going to listen to them. Like it makes no sense.
What do you mean?
Like it makes no sense that at that point in time it was like people were so against the other side, the side that was like, hey, it's kind of weird that we were able to develop this remedy to get rid of this bug at such a short amount of time, and that it's being enforced on everyone, and if they don't, it could actually affect their job, and now that it was proven that, hey, whoops, we were wrong, it wasn't, it wasn't, how can I say this, as deadly as they said it was. um Not only that, like they were wrong about the shot, they were wrong about like a whole bunch of things, and the other side
What do you
when
mean by
they
they?
thought they you want me to specify, be specific with
No, just give me some general institutions.
all right, so for example, if I'm like, hey, you should take this certain remedy for the bug because if you don't, it's gonna spread and it's gonna kill everyone or whatever. And other side's like, hey, before we take this, maybe we should do more research. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're trying to sell us
Yeah,
something that's not right. Someone behind the thing, you're like, oh no, shut up, blah blah blah. And they were like so loud about it, right? But now that they were proven wrong, how come
there's
the
no
side that was
retribution
right
about.
is not as loud, right? So you see the opposing. It seems like the opposing side is not that. I wouldn't say vengeful because there's no. It's not like they're trying to get back at them, but they're not as loud. There's not. They're not as um like
Vocal.
they don't. Yeah, vocal. So
I mean, that whole situation was very much
and that goes for anything though.
right,
Like
right, and that's what I was that's what I was gonna get to, which is, am I surprised that a government took advantage of a crisis to institute more authoritarian, control over the people that they govern? No, I'm not surprised. That's kind of the recipe. That's kind of like what they do. And I'm, again, not an anarchist. I'm very much, you know, pro America, pro democracy, pro everything we
yes,
have. But I'm also pro checks and balances. And so when you look at
trust
this,
her.
when you look at the Twitter files and you find out, oh, the government was kind of, circumventing, or not circumventing, but they were flirting with unconstitutional actions and they were given the precedent that they could, based on the fact that we were all going through a national emergency. It's like, no, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But they would have done it for any national emergency. It didn't necessarily have to be the pandemic. So, to people like, oh, you're a science denier. It's like, no, there's people that are more skeptical than others. There's people that are more anti-establishment versus pro-establishment. There's people that have a good reason to be skeptical about the institutions that kind of lord over us. I don't know about you, but I'm very much, I consider myself a constitutionalist. Like, I actually believe in, what it is that what they signed on paper. Those things matter. And when governments do this kind of thing, it just makes me lose a little bit of faith in the people that fill these offices, because I fundamentally have faith that the system itself is a good system. It could use some updating, but it works. It's the people that are corrupt. And so I'm not surprised that something like this came out. Am I surprised that nobody cares? Nope. Nope, not at all.
Yeah, but it's weird because I don't know. Maybe the other side's more calm than the other. I don't know. It's just weird. I thought they would, act the same way because they're both opposing sides, but I guess not. Seems like when one side's wrong, the other side's quiet. But when the other side's wrong, the other side's not quiet at all. So it's
Yeah, it's not a proportionate, level of
or maybe it's just the fact that the media is controlled by a certain agenda in a certain group, at least now compared to back in the day. And maybe that's why we don't see the other side, right? It's
the
because they control
contrarian
the
side.
media.
Sure. And I mean, that's kind of sucks, because that was the whole point of the establishment of a free press, was that they were supposed to be contrary to, the government estate. Um,
I mean, it's kind of crazy because even talking on this platform right now, we have to be
that's on
careful
you. I don't
of
care
not.
about making money. I'm just here for a good conversation. I'll say
It's
whatever. If
like,
YouTube want to come after me, come for me. I'll take my three strikes.
hey, I'm not associating. I'm just kidding.
No.
But
But that's the problem, is that a lot of people think that they
yeah,
have to live under the thumb of, you know, some shadow government or some shadow cooperation between the publishers of this content and the people that govern the people, that are supposed to be for the people, of the people, by the people, that whole thing. I, I'm not surprised nobody cares.
damn, bro, are you from this
I'm
planet?
100% on this planet.
Lonely Martian.
Yeah, honestly, that's what it is. I was born on Mars, and I'm looking at a bunch of Earthlings, and it seems they don't get it. None of them got it together. I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
So now that we're talking about, democracy, how about the war with Russia and Ukraine?
Ugly situation, Josh. I don't know what to tell you. Things could look worse.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think how do you think this resolves?
Wow. I don't know. I don't think it will resolve, man. Right now, they're saying that was it Saudi Arabia, I think, actually sent I think $300 million of aid to Ukraine or something. Supposedly Saudi Arabia is allies with Russia. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there, but and then China's, trying to come up with some sort of peace treaty. Fuck me, that's getting cut out. But anyway,
What about China? Be careful,
yeah,
they might cancel
China
you.
China has no control, man. What the fuck? This is not,
Yeah, I honestly
communism.
don't know who China thinks they are, but they need to chill out.
Yeah, they definitely need to chill out.
Russians too, for that
But
matter.
China, yeah, it's kind of weird, right? They say that China and Russia have an alliance as
Yeah.
well. They do, but it's like if China's trying to create some sort of peace treaty, and that kind of goes against the U.S. because usually it's the U.S. that says, "Hey, we're gonna come up with the peace treaty, and China's kind of like in a way becoming like a geopolitical power in a
Mm,
way, right? I would say.
but
You don't, you don't,
you're on the right thread though. So you got to ask yourself, why is it in China's best interest to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine? Maybe because they do have a partnership, and if this thing with the Russians and the Ukraine escalates to something, let's say like a hot war between the
yeah.
direct belligerents being the U.S. and Russia. Let's say it plays out, and I'll be honest, for a million and one reasons, it wouldn't look good for the Russians. China's next. So it behooves China to
So
broker peace
what
so
you
that they're not the
what
next
you
direct targets of our ire.
so, so you're trying to say that Russia would go after China
No,
next?
we would win, and we would go after China next. We have a very long memory for these kinds of things, and when you pick sides, we remember.
Uh,
So put it this way: Russia's out here committing God knows how many atrocities. The Ukrainians are not innocent. I'm sure of war's hell, either way you slice it. But when you have two countries that are aligned and they've made their
mhm.
alliance known, after we hit Russia or not hit Russia, let's put that out there. We do not want any kind of kinetic war with Russia. But if we were to just play this out to try to justify why China would want to broker peace, it's because I can imagine that we would then say, "Hey, China, stay in your lane, or this is what's going to happen to you. Either straighten up, or you're next on the chopping block. You don't want the smoke. China don't want the smoke. Russia don't want the smoke. China sees that. They have their own agenda going on. I can imagine them going to Russia and being like, yo, how about we just sue for peace? Let's figure this out. Let's everybody go home. Why? Because we don't
Do you
need these
think
angry
Putin?
ass Americans trampling through the oceans, coming to conquer shit. We got our own things to do.
That's crazy, bro. Yeah.
I mean, the alternative is no, Russia, go ahead, do your thing. Oh, you want to send off a tactical nuke? Go for it. But you know where that goes. There is no rule book here when it comes to nuclear warfare. We are top dog right now, and if they want to play that game, there is no one for one. There's no rules of engagement. There is no such thing as a congruent use of force. So
Yeah.
it can escalate really quickly. So it's in everybody's best interest to keep it in their pants right now.
I see. I see. Yeah.
But with that being said, individually, neither China nor Russia really want the smoke.
So how do you see this resolving? Like, do you see it just ending eventually, or is it gonna keep going for another year? Or
Well, it's been a hiatus, technically, for the past couple months, just simply, I mean, all war is weather dependent.
yeah,
You know
that's
what I
right.
mean?
Well, is Russia gaining ground at all? Like,
Sure, but none of the big pushes are going to happen until like all their troops are mobilized in, I think, something like April or May, early June.
oh
So they're going to be mobilizing more people. All the 300,000 soldiers that they were trying to mobilize early with that draft, in 2022, it takes a while. It takes some
yeah,
startup time in order to get all those boys trained up and actually integrated with their units and then deployed. Mind you, there's a logistical train that has to fuel this entire operation. And a lot of that infrastructure either got blown up or just doesn't exist yet, and they have to build it up. Otherwise, they risk getting cut off once they start the war. So far, it's like from what I've seen, it's been a lot of incremental, uh, moves. Um, but the real fighting isn't going to start until, you know, the ground dries up.
wow, yeah, because they blow a lot of the bridges and everything. So that's crazy. So once the army's mobilized, I mean, and you're saying by April, let's just say by the end of this year. I mean, do you think it'll be a quick win, or will there be a lot of
No, but
resistance? Or
I think we'll start to figure out who is going to win, though.
yeah,
How
definitely.
long it takes to play out? Who knows? And I mean, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. But seriously,
Yeah. And do you think like do you think that like Russia's end goal is to just take over Ukraine, or do you think it's going to keep pushing more and more and more?
um, if you were to take this into like a historical context, then I would say, yeah, I would say Ukraine isn't the goal.
They're trying to like recoup the whole Soviet Union.
Not necessarily the whole Soviet Union. It's just they need to get to a defensible position within that region of the world. Um, and Ukraine, the frontier of Russia and Ukraine isn't that border that they're looking for. You know, when you play the game of spheres of influence, Russia's trying to control a sphere that's larger than its current footprint. You know, at the culmination of the Cold War, they kind of got shrunk down to one singular country, that being Russia, which was a it was a when you look at a map of like Russian resources and just Russian geography, it's not a good look. So over the past 30 years, they've been making these small pushes out in every direction to try to get to a position where they can actually stage their forces, develop some infrastructure, and control access points into that region, into that sphere of influence, so that there is some kind of buffer zone between the NATO countries and Russia in this case. So, do I think Ukraine's the end all? No. But do I think they would chill out if they got it all? Yeah. Do I think that's the solution? Not if I'm Ukrainian. I don't feel like I should be giving up everything on account of these assholes.
Yeah.
But if I'm Russia, I'm also understanding like, hey, it ain't you that we're after. It's what's behind you. There's something bigger at stake here. I can see both sides. How do we broker a peace deal? I don't know. Um, Elon could stop providing internet service. Says I'm taking
Yeah,
Starlink
that's
home.
another.
That'll put everybody in a pickle on the European side or on the Ukrainian side.
Is he the only one for providing right
I
now
don't.
internet
I
service?
wouldn't be able to speak to that. I just know that from like what I heard. You know,
Yeah,
had it not been for Starlink, Ukraine fell within
it
3 days, something like that. So the entire
that's
military apparatus is running off a backbone, you know, off of a backbone that Elon Musk was providing out of the kindness of his heart, um, which I think is actually a really good lever to pull on if you were try to de-escalate the situation to prevent it from going further. So, you know, the second that Ukraine starts talking, well, hey, we want to win back, you know, the Donbass region. Okay, makes sense. You want to get to pre-February kind of like lines. But then, you know, you're also hearing rumblings that, hey, well, we also plan on taking Crimea. It's like, well, as of right now, that's currently Russian, so that would be a land grab. Granted, in the opposite direction, but that's an escalation. That's you going on the offensive, and we have no skin in that game. And
yeah.
specifically, Elon has no skin in that game, so he shouldn't have to feel the burden of having to carry that. Cut off the internet if you decide to go that route. How about we get you to a certain line and that's it? I mean, otherwise, I don't see a pretty I don't see a pretty solution to the situation. But you're gonna have to start pulling on some levers in order to
And
control everybody's impulses.
in China right now, with the whole population, um, there's a whole bunch of I've seen a whole bunch of content out there talking about how they're actually falling behind, replace the next generation of workers, and that was kind of due to the whole being able to have one child, right, per family for
Yeah,
such a long time. I know they got rid of that, but it was implemented on for a very long time. So, do you see their economy
the
going
wrap for
down?
China.
So, what do you mean by it's a wrap for China? Do you think that there's any way for them to like stop like the next generation from? Well, actually,
The
no, not
babies that
stop,
needed to
but
be
oh,
born in order to replace their working generation needed to be born
yeah,
20 to 30 years ago. You can't turn back the clock,
Okay,
and you can't wait another 20 years before a new batch of kids gets into the actual workforce.
yeah.
It's a wrap.
Can you can you tell the next generation like, hey, instead of having two, have like I don't know, three or four? It's
Sure,
just the
yeah,
fact
you
like,
can
hey,
do
no,
that, but I mean, you can't
can
force people to have babies. Second of all, I mean, maybe they could, but you couldn't do it here. Um,
you say that again? First, what? Can you say that again?
you can't force people to have babies. Maybe China could,
Yeah.
but they don't have a resource structure capable of actually sustaining that. And the shit is, you're gonna have to wait another 20 to 30 years before those babies that are born, let's say within the next 9 months, are even ready to join the workforce. Which at that point, God knows what it's gonna look like. So you don't have the time
So
to buy yourself.
yeah, so since they don't have enough bodies or humans to replace the next generation of workers, what are they going to do? Are they
They're
going to
gonna have
have
to
to
outsource.
like?
Well, I'll put it this way: China is a. I think I've said this before, but you know, China is a product of globalization.
That's going
It's
away
going
soon, I
away
think.
for a million and one
Yeah.
reasons, but it's going away. And so, unfortunately, they have a country that an entire economy that's primarily based on that quick industrialization that there is not going to be any kind of support base for going into the future. I mean, if you're not going to have a workforce that's capable of keeping up with everything that you have currently, you're going to have to outsource that work. Who are they going to be able to outsource it to? Africa? Somewhere where the labor costs are low, but the general skill level is high enough to maintain whatever it is that they have. Good luck. Maybe they have enough capital to deploy. I don't think so. Um,
Oh man, they do own a lot of Africa, so.
yeah, but
uh,
I don't know. And then, so not just from a demographic perspective, but from a resource perspective, like we can't pretend that this war hasn't put a major strain on their ability to get oil. I mean, I think nitrogen production, potash. Peter Zion, was a geopolitical strategist, wrote a really good book recently, um, and he discusses a lot of these things. Although I haven't gotten to, I don't know if he's included anything about China in there, but if you listen to his talks, he talks a lot about um, how like China, the majority of China's inputs are imported. So for food,
wow.
so it was something like potash,
Order-
nitrogen, um,
Do you know from
from
where?
different parts of the world. And I believe one of those big inputs is coming from the Ukraine slash Russia conflict zone. And so nearly all of it had, like nearly all of the production has dropped to zero. So they're kind of screwed in that sense. So in a country where you don't have enough people to work and you don't have enough inputs, agricultural inputs, to actually feed your current workforce, that doesn't look good. And it's not even like you could do you know, pre-globalization kind of tactics where one empire would invade another. They don't have the military capability of projecting power far enough to conquer anything that wouldn't immediately be backed up by probably something affiliated with NATO. So, if you have, I think they have like two carrier groups to our 20. What are you going to do? Swing at the fence? All it takes is one good monsoon season, and next thing you know, you're down a carrier fleet, a carrier group. Then what? How are you going to actually protect your mainland? So I don't see a possibility currently where China remains or even poses any kind of geopolitical powerhouse. I do think this is probably going to go to a more like multipolar style, something like pre 1945. Um, Based on what I've read, I mean, from his book, it was very eye opening. But I could see a world where we go to pre imperial or pre globalization kind of rules where everybody just does trade amongst themselves. Um, and that's it. So your supply chain better be top to bottom within the walls of the place that you control. Otherwise, there goes international.
Do you You see the USA as are we able to be like
I think we're
self-sustainers?
going to be fine. I think what led to the general prosperity of the country in the first place hasn't left. It's still here, and it's not the people. It's a lot of it's just geography based. It's the fact that we have rivers, connecting one side of all the disparate lands, all these would be hubs of innovation or just agricultural base or, you name it. We have ways of connecting all of that and transporting goods from one side to the other, which most places don't. Most countries don't. Most countries don't have the ability to, produce their own shale, their own oil, whereas we do. Question is whether we're going to have, you know, disposable capital to do it after a would-be, global conflict. And also, where do we situate this? Where do we situate these places? Where do we get the labor from? Are we going to have to borrow it from Mexico? Definitely not going to get it from Canada for the loan and stuff.
Yeah, I think Mexico has a really high skill set
But
of
like, do any
people,
of them want to,
and
pick like oranges? Do any of
I
them want to
mean,
build
yeah,
roadways and like put up power lines? And like I don't see that happening. I don't know if we have a labor base, a labor economy that could handle that kind of growth or that kind of sustainability in the short term. But we would probably just partner up with our sphere of influence, which is going to be the NAFTA countries, and just say, hey, y'all want a job? Come through.
all right, guys. I think this
No,
is
no, no, no.
very
Let me say one more
productive.
thing.
One more thing. What's up?
Don't do drugs. Stay in school
Dude, yeah,
or make money,
stay in school.
but don't
Yep.
listen to us. Definitely don't subscribe. Definitely don't come back next week.
What? No, subscribe, guys. Don't subscribe. All right.